Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Madeline Milka, President and CEO of APACS, the Asian Pacific American Institute for Congressional Studies. Thank you for joining us as we dive into our timely discussion on diversity in the workforce. I'd like to thank our event partners, Apple, Toyota, Dell, and Walmart for sponsoring this timely panel. Don't forget to take a look at the exhibitor booths on the Summit platform, as well as the downloadable program book for all worthy information from our sponsors we are so happy to have them as a part of all of the events during this legislative summit. It's now my pleasure to introduce Congressman Krishnamoorthy for opening remarks. Congressman Krishnamoorthy represents the 8th District of Illinois, which includes Chicago's west and northwest suburbs. He is also the founder and chairman of both the Bipartisan Congressional Caucus to End the Youth Vaping Epidemic and the Bipartisan Solar Caucus. He also serves as co-chair of the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus Immigration Task Force. It's my pleasure to welcome Congressman Krishnamoorthy.
Hi, I'm Congressman Raja Krishnamoorthi from the 8th District of Illinois. Thank you to Madeline Milky and APACS for allowing me to address you virtually. I hope that we can meet together next time after the pandemic ends. In the meantime, I hope that you are safe and healthy. Since the year 2000, there have been only 32 Asian American CEOs at Fortune 500 companies. And this lack of Asian American CEOs matters because diversity and representation matter. As I often say, if you don't have a seat at the table, you're on the menu. That's why AAPI leaders need to lay the foundation for future Asian American CEOs and politicians so that we can all have a seat at the table. When we do, it helps the entire community. It helps our country, and it helps the companies we work for because study after study has shown that more diverse organizations achieve better results through developing and implementing a broader range of strategies. While the growth of representation for the AAPI community is slower than we'd want, things are moving in the right direction. We've seen direct response from corporations on public issues of diversity and inclusion, such as the way many companies have responded to the increase in anti-Asian hate crimes. We've had companies better encourage diversity through mentorship. We've had them develop community training programs and more inclusive recruitment practices. We've had them do seminars with people like me and others to talk about hate crimes and what we all need to do to encourage diversity and to fight bigotry and prejudice and discrimination. We need our companies to continue to do more, and we look forward to working with them. Thank you so much for everything that you do, and thank you to APACS for having me.
Thank you, Congressman, for all of your leadership. We greatly appreciate your support. It's now my pleasure to introduce Barbara Whye, Vice President of Inclusion and Diversity from our event partner, Apple, with a special message.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Congressman Krishnamoorthy, for participating in today's important legislative leadership conference. And to the amazing co-chairs of the gala this evening, Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal and Congressman Mark Takano. I'd also like to thank the Asian Pacific American Institute for Congressional Studies and its fearless leader, Madeline Milka. I wish, as I know we all do, that we could be in a better time. As it seems, we're confronted daily with injustices everywhere we look. We're truly living in an inflection point, and what we do with it, this inflection point, will make all the difference. This moment is an opportunity to make a better world for our children, our future, and take care of the planet we all must live on together. I am committed to a better world, not only as a citizen, but as a corporate citizen in my capacity in leading diversity, equity, and inclusion at Apple. To create the change we want to see in the world, we must first own where we stand in it. At Apple, inclusion, diversity, and equity are core values. Apple is becoming a better reflection of the world we live in, and we're deeply committed to hiring and promoting more inclusively, fostering a culture that allows people to do their life's best work, and working to create more access and opportunities for everyone. We are working hard to make our company more reflective of the communities we serve. Nearly 50% of Apple's U.S. workforce is now comprised of employees from underrepresented communities. And in the past year, 43% of open leadership roles in the U.S. were filled by diverse talent. Globally, Apple has a firm and long-standing commitment to pay equity, and every year we examine the compensation employees receive and ensure that we maintain pay equity. We are holding ourselves accountable to continue to do more. We've integrated and built inclusion and diversity measures into our annual review processes and systems for every leader, including those at the highest level of the company. Our work also extends beyond our walls. Apple has committed $100 million to our Racial Equity and Justice Initiative, which challenges the systemic barriers to opportunities for so many communities of color. And as we've recently announced, we're accelerating our U.S. investments geographically and across diverse communities, with plans to add 20,000 new jobs across the country over the next 5 years. This includes opening a new campus in the Research Triangle Park in North Carolina and expanding our footprint coast to coast. We are making progress, and we know there is still much more work to be done. At Apple, we remain clear-eyed about the challenges before us. And with humility, deep humility, we are committed to the journey. We are determined to speak up and take action. Together, we are determined to create a more just and equitable society, one where everyone has access to the American dream, where everyone feels safe, and where everyone is treated with dignity and respect. Thank you again. A warm welcome to all of you, and have a great evening.
Thank you so much, Barbara, and our event partner, Apple, for all of your leadership. It's now my pleasure to introduce our moderator, Amy Cho. Ms. Cho is a general assignment reporter for NBC for Washington. She, like me, grew up in the area in Great Falls, Virginia, where she wanted to be a journalist from a young age. She attended Langley High School and then Cornell University. And during her time at NBC4, she has won 2 awards for her work as a multimedia journalist, shooting, writing, and editing stories. She's also very involved with the Asian American Journalists Association. Amy, I turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Madeline. I'm so honored to be here. Thank you for having me. Obviously, diversity in the workforce is something that I'm so passionate about. I think we can't talk enough about it. So I'm very excited to introduce to you this wonderful all-star lineup of panelists that we have today. Julia Wada, she is the Group Vice President of Strategy, Innovation, and Transformation at Toyota. We also have Krish Gupta. He is the Senior Vice President of Litigation and Intellectual Property at Dell. And we have Philipp Thomas-Wallace. He is the Director of Federal Government Affairs at Walmart. So thank you, all 3 of you, for being here today. And for those of you watching, thank you for joining us. Feel free to drop questions in the chat. We would love to take your questions at the audience Q&A portion at the end. So feel free to drop those throughout the panel. And without further ado, let's get right into it. So I want to start off by talking about what exactly diversity and inclusion in the workforce is. We've heard a lot of talk about it, a lot of posts on social media. It's all the rage these days, but what exactly is it? What does it mean? And why is it important in the workforce? So Julia, I'm going to start it off with you.
Thank you, Amy, and thank you. I'm really privileged to be here with all of you, excited to be here and talk about such an important topic. So diversity in the workforce, it's really all about reflecting the variability we have outside our walls, what's reflected in society, whether that's race, age, gender, cultural background, experience. And at Toyota, our goal is to have what's our representation inside reflect the world outside. But that's really just a starting point. Of course, we have the diversity, but without the inclusive environment and a place where people feel like they can belong, we can't get the benefits, right? So, it's all of it, diversity, equity, inclusion, and we certainly heard that from our beginning comments here today.
Absolutely, yes, so important. All right, Krish, I'll throw it to you now.
Yes, well, first of all, Amy, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to join everybody today. And as Julia said, diversity and inclusion for us is a business imperative. It helps us deliver business and social value that is arguably as important to Dell and our continued market leadership as our technology strategy and execution is. When we think about sort of diversity, as Julia said, it's essentially, we think about, ensuring that our workforce is composed of many different types of people, a broad mix of races, cultures, socioeconomic backgrounds, abilities, genders, and races. And inclusion is about providing an environment where all team members are respected, feel that they're part of a group, and have equal access to opportunity and involvement. And for us at Dell, we want to make sure that we're providing a place where people want to work, team members feel they belong, and our values reflect those of our customers. And it's part of our DNA. It's more than what we do. It's really who we are.
Absolutely. Thank you, Krish. Yeah, I love what you said about it being a business imperative. This isn't just a bonus or something that's good to have, it's something that's necessary. So I really love that. And then Philipp, I'll throw it to you next.
Thank you, Amy. And thank you to Apex for inviting Walmart to be a participant in this very important discussion, and wishing a very happy Asian and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. I am here today to share a little bit about Walmart's story in the D&I front, but also to learn, realizing that, no company is perfect. We're all striving to build more diverse and inclusive workplaces. And I think a part of that is learning from each other, sharing challenges, sharing success, and also benchmarking is how we work together to achieve. And it's also important, the goal of thought leadership in the first place is to drive the type of progress to where we won't have to have these same conversations, 10 and 20 years from now. It's about moving the ball forward little by little. I wholeheartedly agree with what Julia and Krish shared regarding how we view diversity and also inclusion. I think the key word for inclusion is intentional, right? So, it's more than just having diverse employees, but to build a truly inclusive environment, you have to be very intentional, and that's in all areas of your business. And at Walmart, we take that serious in all of our relationships, not just internally with our 1.5 million employees here in the US, but also with our suppliers, all right? And also the difference that we're making as a company externally as well.
Absolutely, for sure. And then next, I want to talk about what specifically your companies are doing to promote diversity and inclusion. I was reading through all three of your companies' diversity reports. Very impressive. It looks like you all have so many different programs going on, whether it be training programs, recruitment, employee resource groups. So I would love to hear about those initiatives. So I'm going to start it with you, Julia.
Thank you, Amy. So actually this year, we've really, I think, leaned into opening up new levels of dialogue between employees at all levels about diversity and inclusion. And for me personally, and I think all around the company, it's really stimulated real new learning, understanding, empathy, and action, different types of action. So for example, our diversity and inclusion team has brought what we call our Agents of Change speaker series. And what they've done is they've brought in thought leaders and change agents to come in and talk to our team members from all over the country. And we've had a number of speakers like Dr. Kendi on anti-racism, and Amanda Wynn on combating violence against the AAPI community, Brian Stevenson from Equal Justice. And one of the first ones was Emmanuel Acho on uncomfortable conversations. And I actually had the chance to co-host that one. And it was really great to be able to talk about things that we all wanted to talk about, but we weren't quite sure how to do that. And that happened last summer, so it was really timely. We've also really expanded listening sessions with our team members, and we call them business partnering groups. They're our employee resource groups. They have really taken the lead here. So our African American Collaborative, for example, led a number of these sessions last summer, and partnered with our Chief Diversity Officer, Sandra Phillips Rogers, and we had the chance to just really listen and hear from our team members. And it was attended by people at all levels. A lot of senior executives also had a chance to attend and listen and share. I had a chance to do that. And then more recently, we've had listening sessions championed by our Asian American business partnering group, TASIA, similarly with our Chief Diversity Officer, where we listen to the voices of how these recent events have really impacted our team members' lives. So these have been really impactful this year, building on many years of work we've done around education, and it's been decades-long journey of diversity.
That's so cool. Oh, so many amazing speakers. I'm jealous. I wish I could have attended. And then Philipp, I'll have you next talk about Walmart's diversity initiatives. I understand you guys are doing a Center for Racial Justice, which sounds very cool. Tell me about that.
Yeah, for sure, Amy. So at Walmart, our approach to building a more diverse and inclusive company internally is that the responsibility for building such an environment is not just solely reliant on the D&I team, right? I think a lot of times D&I teams absorb all the pressure within organizations to try to drive change. But the way we see it, in order to really affect change, it's important to embed D&I priorities throughout the entire business. So that's all throughout the business units, that's company leadership, from senior level all the way down. It's important, we call our colleagues associates. It's important for associates to be equipped with inclusive leadership training, resources. We have employee resource groups that meet regularly, and they have senior leadership support that provide a number of opportunities for feedback and for mentorship. And then most importantly, when I think about the question of how do we make sure that, D&I is a message that's driven throughout the company. At Walmart, we have about 72,000 leaders within the company who have inclusivity training as a part of their performance evaluation. And so we're not just talking about, the resources being available, but we're talking about putting them into action through accountability and saying that, if you're going to be a leader within the company, you have to incorporate D&I in essentially everything that you do. So that's how we drive it, so that it's not just solely relying upon the effort of one team, but driving it throughout the organization so that it becomes such an organic part of the fabric and the culture that we're able to see real progress.
Very cool. Yeah, I think it's so important that, everybody is required to participate, and it's not just falling to underrepresented groups to, carry all the weight of educating others. So I think that's very cool. And then Krish, I'll throw it to you next.
Thank you, Amy. Dell's diversity and inclusion strategy encourages positive change, empowering team members to be their true self, creating a culture where we as team members all belong and find ourselves having the ability to innovate in new ways to do things better for our customers. Our people philosophy is ruled by the concept that we grow together and achieve best when we work together. In our most recent fiscal year, we added diversity and inclusion to the 3 key areas that we already address in our people philosophy: achievement, balance, and connection. And while D&I was always implied, this update really reflects our very strong commitment to embedding D&I into the heart of our business and holds us accountable for driving and measuring progress to our goals. The company has established employee resource groups, which are voluntary groups led by Dell team members. And they promote a diverse, inclusive workplace that's aligned with our values, goals, and objectives. And it also, these ERGs are also communities within Dell in which team members with common interests or backgrounds can connect, learn, develop new skills, and impact the business. And currently there are more than 105,000 ERG members in one or more of our 13 ERGs. And there are 463 chapters in more than 74 countries around the world. And team members who participate in ERGs are really encouraged to think out of the box to help us understand and enhance the work environment in ways that we could have better business impact. And then we recently launched our Diversity and Inclusion Ambassador Program. It's a 3-level program that offers team members a way to build their skills and business acumen around topics related to D&I. And by the end of our most recent fiscal year, we had more than 800 certified D&I ambassadors representing every region. And nearly 600 additional team members are in the process of completing their certification. And with their help, we were able to take and facilitate learning sessions around what we call Many Advocating for Real Change, or MARC. This is a foundational learning program that consists of workshops on topics of unconscious bias, privilege, insider-outsider dynamics, and gender role conditioning. And MARC really offers Dell team members a judgment-free space to examine their beliefs and grapple with challenging subjects directly and honestly. And we're at about 33% overall team member participation for our MARC program. And we have a goal of reaching 95% of our employees and have them participate by 2030. And we're going to continue to modify MARC to make it globally accessible and scale it so that we can make it more interactive, engaging, and reach more team members as time goes on.
Very cool. I love that. Yeah, I think employee resource groups are so important. Here at NBC, we are currently in the process actually of starting an employee resource group for Asian American employees in the DC area. So very excited about that. Yeah, and then for my next question, we've touched on this a little bit already, but I want to dive deeper into it. How do you get the entire company, including the leadership team, on board with diversity and inclusion initiatives? And also, how do we hold companies accountable to real change? What does accountability specifically look like? So I'm going to start with you, Philipp.
Hey, that's a great question, Amy. And I think in order to drive, some of the issues we're talking about here, there has to be a couple of different things. First off, there has to be a metric for success. And when I say metric, I don't necessarily mean, putting a number on the whiteboard and, kind of racing to it. Although data does tell a story, it's just a little bit more important than that. And then also I think transparency is important. Once you, as an organization, have defined what those metrics of success, what they look like, whether it's a year from now, 5 years from now, or further into the future, you have to be transparent about your progress and measure things as they go along. And sometimes transparency requires tough conversations. Even within Walmart, our executive leadership have scorecards that measure their annual success. And Walmart, we also transitioned from releasing our annual CDEI report annually to now twice a year, so that we're able to better measure results in a more short-term way. So I think between transparency and accountability and holding kind of our own feet to the fire, that's how you push progress.
For sure. Interesting. Tell me more about the scorecards. I'm curious. Who does the scoring?
Yeah, so the scorecard is facilitated by our chief D&I officer, Ben Hassan, but it's done in coordination with executive leaders. As I mentioned earlier, it's kind of, it's easy to discuss intention, but it's hard to go against data and hard numbers. And so a scorecard is a scorecard, and it's just one way of measuring success. There are also a number of other conversations that I think are incredibly important to have that really drives a very robust D&I agenda. As I mentioned earlier, we have about 72,000 associates who have inclusivity training as a part of their annual performance review. But that training is not limited just to those 72,000 associates. All of our associates have resources and access to resources that highlight some of the topics that were mentioned earlier, the unconscious bias, LGBTQ training, and a variety of other areas. Because I think if unconscious bias training is only reaching those who are hiring managers, for example, then we're already falling short. It's about getting resources and training to people before they're hiring manager, right? And so we're talking about throughout their life cycle within the company. And so that that type of training and those type of resources help enable people and equip them to be prepared to build a more inclusive environment.
Gotcha, thank you. Yeah, and Julia, I'll go to you next. How does Toyota make sure that the leadership team is on board with diversity and inclusion, and what does accountability look like there?
Well, you know, diversity and inclusion has been a journey for the company, but it also is individually for all of our leaders. And I think it's really by including our leadership and supporting them on that journey. And one of the things we do is we have a very broad executive diversity and inclusion council. And actually this past year, we expanded it so that essentially everybody at my level, a group vice president, is pretty much part of this council. And that includes, about the top 1 to 2% of our company. And we're all responsible for, similar to what Philipp said, integrating diversity and inclusion into all aspects of our business. Now, our EDIC is chaired by our presidents of the finance company, my boss, Mark Templin, as well as on the vehicle side, Ted Ogawa. And we meet regularly to learn and really advance what we're doing here at Toyota. We also have scorecards, always have diversity and inclusion scorecards, and we've had them for some time. And they include things like measures on our personal leadership and commitment to diversity, our workforce representation, some activities around supplier diversity. And we participate in some of our own goals on there, as well as our diversity and inclusion partners help us identify some stretch goals for us. But we're ultimately accountable to our bosses, just like any other thing we're accountable for, right? Another aspect is Toyota problem solving is very fact-based. So internally, we look at the numbers. Each of us has a HR analytics team that supports our workforce diversity numbers. So we all have our own, and that's something that we look at. We also look at data from our team member experience survey, for example, and our D&I team has a really great approach because I think they recognize it's not a one-size-fits-all approach in terms of how we improve when it comes to diversity. There's different issues and challenges in different parts of the company. So they look at that data, they work with the different leaders, and they develop custom approaches to deal with some of those issues and make improvements. So we have that. And then, there's transparency clearly is a mega trend, right? And I think we began our journey of transparency a few years ago with our D&I annual report, where we've put some measures out there that helps us share what we're doing and hold ourselves accountable. We've also been participating for many years on a number of benchmarking type of activities. And so, for example, Diversity Inc. is something we participated in for many years. And I'm actually really excited to be able to share that just last week, we learned that we are part of the Diversity Inc. Top 50 again this year, and are at number 7, up from number 10 last year. And we're the only automotive company there. So they have been great in terms of us learning what are the best companies doing out there, and that motivates us and inspires us, and also holds us us accountable because we want to continue to improve. So I think all those kinds of things. We also have an external diversity advisory board that we consult with, and they hold up the mirror, and they also help us hold ourselves accountable. So lots of different things, but similar to what we heard.
Gotcha, and congratulations on the high ranking. That's huge for you guys. Yeah, I think these scorecards are so interesting. They seem to be the new trend. Krish, tell me about your company's initiatives. Do you guys also have scorecards?
Oh, we do. We announced an initiative called Progress Made Real, which is our social impact plan, and if you will, and with goals for 2030. And we announced this back in November 2019 at Dell Technologies Summit. And a critical aspect of making real progress, we think and believe, requires cultivating inclusion. And as I said previously, diversity and inclusion are no longer the right thing to do or something nice to have. It's really a business imperative. So we've set moonshot goals intended to challenge us to have the greatest impact on cultivating inclusion. So these goals are by 2030, 50% of our global workforce and 40% of our global people leaders will be women. We have also set specific goals around cultivating inclusion that are grounded in real action by, including by 2030, 25% of our US workforce and 15% of our US people leaders will be Black, African American, Hispanic, or Latino minorities. 50% of our employees by 2030 will participate in employee resource groups to drive social impact. Another goal is to have 95% of our employees participate in annual foundational learning. I talked about MARC, focused on key topics such as unconscious bias, harassment, privilege, microaggressions. And then we also hope to have, by 2030, 50% of the people empowered by our social and education initiatives be girls, women, or underrepresented groups. And driving this culture of equity and belonging in our organization requires intentional effort. As Philipp mentioned, we know it requires diligence and partnership across all of Dell. So we, in order to make our 2030 goals, and implement them and make sure that we attain them, we've created a D&I governance model to help ensure that we meet those goals to attract our future workforce and develop and retain an empowered workforce. And the layers of governance include a broad representation of executives and team members from across the company. In fact, Michael Dell leads our Global Diversity Council, which is a group of executives across the business and our regions charged with driving our D&I strategy. They also act as sponsors for our ERGs, and this council meets biannually to review our progress and ensure that we're driving workplace inclusion innovation while attracting top talent. And our leadership scorecards really provide diversity data and trends to leaders down to 4 levels of leadership. And the data shared pertains to diversity in hiring, promotions, and terminations. And it's intended to provide leaders the necessary information to inform the creation and execution of our diversity action plans. And the scorecards also help our leaders to understand how they can make progress towards our 2030 goals. And the last thing I'll mention is we've identified 3 areas to focus, in which to organize our initiatives and measure our progress. The first area is build and attract, and this is to this is designed to diversify, to fulfill technology jobs, look beyond the traditional talent pool, partner to ensure workforce preparedness, and then there's develop and retain. So you empower to engage, support employee connections, and then strengthen through employee leadership the connection and growth of our employees. And lastly, scale, which is educate for equality in the workplace and develop breakthrough diversity-related innovations. And we think that these leadership principles now really help our people leaders embrace different unique perspectives as they accelerate innovation and results and create a safe and inclusive environment for team members.
Thank you, Krish. And yeah, I think it's interesting that you mentioned one of your 2030 goals is to have 50% of the workforce be women, because historically tech has obviously been a male-dominated industry. So tell me a little bit more about the initiative to attract women and retain them in a tech industry.
We have, as I mentioned, we have D&I ambassadors. The D&I ambassador program is really designed to go out and talk to our talent that's out there. Hiring diverse talent is just one part of the challenge. If that talent enters our doors and does not feel included, she or he can't succeed. And so we go back to square one. We have a diversity leadership accelerator program, or DLAP, as we call it. It's a 9-month coaching and sponsorship program to help high-performing individuals advance their careers at Dell. It's designed to address the leaky pipeline challenge. Representation of women in the workforce, including Black women and women of color, drops at each career stage. And by developing senior professionals and mid-level managers, this Leadership Accelerator program will help us develop a more diverse, balanced workforce and a much more diverse and balanced leadership pipeline.
I like that term, leaky pipeline. I may have to steal that in the future. Yeah, and so we've talked about leadership and holding the top people at the company accountable. How do we get everyone now at the company on board with diversity inclusion? And what are some options for people to share their concerns if they feel like they have concerns with diversity at all levels? So Philipp, I'm going to come back to you with that one.
Yeah, sure. I think that the employee resource groups that it seems like we all have been just one method where employees can raise concerns because each group has a senior leader that's a sponsor and that's heavily involved. These groups meet pretty regularly and they have an avenue, right, to not only express maybe how they feel about the company internally, but there's also a way for them to share, thoughts on positions that they think the company should take externally, right? And so we're in an environment now where, as Krish mentioned, when we talk about inclusivity, we talk about recruiting, great talent. We talk about bringing them in to the doors, nurturing them, giving them, a great supportive environment. But we're now in a day and age now where communities are also thinking about how does the company's values line up with mine? And what is the company willing to stand for externally? And so we've seen a number of these cases and examples in the last year, not specifically just Walmart, but I think in the broader business community, where you have, colleagues in employee resource groups that stand up and say, hey, it's great what we're doing here, hoorah, but how we show up in society as a corporate social responsibility, responsible citizen. Are we going to fight back against harmful policies or proposals that may have an impact on us? Because at the end of the day, we love our jobs. We're very fortunate to work for the companies we work for. But when you get in the car and drive home from work, you don't leave your skin. You don't leave your heritage. You don't leave any of that behind. And so it's really about how do companies think about the livelihoods and the importance of some of these issues to their employees outside of the office. And so I think we'll see even more of that. But that's just one example of kind of how we are making sure that senior leadership is hearing directly from associates rather than having layers and kind of bureaucracy or kind of avoiding tough conversations. It's important to meet those things head on.
Absolutely. Philipp, thank you. And then Julia, I'll pose the same question to you. How can team members at all levels of the company get on board with diversity and inclusion?
Yeah, I think two ways. Well, one is we certainly think that team members at all levels, they have driven diversity inclusion forward for us at Toyota. And we provide education and resources to all of our team members. So this includes things like education around like unconscious bias, allyship, other things like tips for starting conversations. We've got short video clips that can be used and suggested podcasts, articles, books, things like that. But the other thing that has really been powerful is our employee resource groups. And I do want to talk about them because our first one started 20 years ago. And it was our first chapter was our Latinx group, Todos is the name of it, is a group. And we have now over 100, we call them business partner group chapters, representing 13 different affinities from all parts of the company, ranging from our headquarters here where I am in Plano, Texas, to our R&D facilities or our manufacturing plants. And all team members are welcome to join them, not only of the affinity, but allies as well are welcomed. And I think they have been one of the most powerful drivers of progress in the time I've been involved. And I've been fortunate to be involved in this journey because I have had responsibility for D&I and HR over the years. And so I've seen what our team members have brought to the table and how they've really moved the needle, especially when they've shared their stories and they've really put their fingerprints on our company and our culture. So, and they continue to do that every day. So for example, we have a women's business partnering group that has we just celebrated our 10th North American Women's Conference that has now really expanded to be an event where it's not only for development, but it really has the chance to lift up our leaders, our female leaders, and give them exposure and give them connection. And we see those kinds of things happening all over the place. I mentioned the listening sessions that our African American Collaborative and our Asian group have driven. And this past year, our business partnering groups also directly guided funds for nonprofits, about $475,000 in funding for nonprofits to address specific aspects of social and racial justice that they personally felt were important. So those kinds of activities have been the things that have driven the company forward. So absolutely, team members have been involved in every part, and I think are pushing us forward.
That's awesome. Yeah, tell me about some of those nonprofits. What are some of the groups that have gotten support?
Oh, ask me the names. Let's see. A lot of them are local. We have 17 U.S. locations, so a lot of them are local to the area. So, like in this area, it might be our North Texas Food Bank. It might be things like we have an initiative in West Dallas around that supports underrepresented students. So I don't have a whole list of them, but they are around our locations and impactful for the team members that live there.
Thank you. And then Krish, same question to you. How can team members at all levels get on board with diversity and inclusion?
Thanks, Amy. As Philip and Julia mentioned, our ERGs play a very important role in that regard. And as I mentioned, we have more than 105,000 ERG members in one or more of our 13 ERGs, and there are 463 chapters in more than 74 countries around the world. So it's already pretty widely adopted sort of program. And then I also mentioned previously, we launched our Diversity and Inclusion Ambassador Program. And this program really has, sort of increased the reach of our D&I team to promote our programs and also to sort of engage as ambassadors across the organization. 800 already certified, 600 additional team members are being certified right now. And then I also mentioned MARC, which is our Many Advocating for Real Change learning sessions. These sessions are essentially designed to help our team members, go through these workshops on topics of unconscious bias, as well as, as I said, gender role conditioning, and helps them examine their beliefs and challenging subjects both directly and honestly. And in particular, in 2020, first with the killings of George Floyd, Elijah McClain, and Breonna Taylor, and then with all of the hate crimes that we've seen against the Asian American and Pacific Islander communities, we had a number of learning and listening sessions throughout the company. And we our leaders took the time to engage with team members and just to listen to them. And coming out of these listening sessions, we heard a consistent request that the topic of racial equity and the learnings from these listening sessions be required learning for all of our leaders as well. And so we turned this MARC program that we had from an in-person model to really a virtual interactive experience, and with an added social justice content. And we're really driving towards reaching our 2030 goal of making sure that 95% of our employees participate in this annual foundational learning. And that's one way we think of ensuring that it's really everybody in the organization that's participating in D&I initiatives in the company.
Krish, thank you. So for my next question, I want to get a little bit more personal with this one. Philip, I'll start with you. Can you just tell me about your own experiences in the workforce? Has there ever been a situation where you felt like the quote unquote only? And if so, what advice do you have for others who are also experiencing similar feelings?
That's a great question, Amy. And when I think about it, I think about conversations I've had previously before, typically with college students who are just starting their professional journey, people who are just entering into the workforce, who are wondering, they think about when we were in school, we didn't spend a whole lot of time talking about, how do you handle when you walk into rooms and spaces where you are the only one. That's been happening to me for essentially my entire professional career. And the advice that I share with these young professionals and college students is a couple of different things. One, always be your authentic self, which I know is easier said than done here on this panel. I know it's a lot harder when you're actually in person in an organization, especially large ones, where you are constantly entering into boardrooms and meeting rooms where you're the only person that look like you or have your background at the table. But I encourage you all listening today, even to be your authentic selves. You belong in the room, right? And so I know there are times where imposter syndrome or kind of some other areas become concerning to people who don't feel like they can relate to the people that they work with or to leadership within their companies. But there's a reason why you're in the room. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. It is your talent and your wit that got you there, and you should never feel inferior, or if your opinion or contributions don't matter. Embrace who you are and bring all of that, because I promise you, the company and the organization that you are working for is better for it.
Absolutely. So well put. I love that. And yes, I can so relate with the whole imposter syndrome thing. I definitely felt that when I first started. Honestly, I still do sometimes, but yes, absolutely good advice. And Julia, is there anything you wanted to add on this one?
Yeah, that is great advice. I think we probably all felt that. And actually, when I hear this question, the one thing that came to my mind was when I was a relatively new executive, and I also happened to be pregnant with my first child. And I remember we have these executive coffee meetings that, once you make executive, it's sort of a big deal. You get to go to this meeting, and I remember feeling a little self-conscious, especially when it was starting to become obvious. But after a couple of meetings, there was actually a new to the company female executive who came up to me afterward and said, "Hey, I noticed you're pregnant. It's great to see. It's great to see that here, and how it's really a non-issue." And because she was thinking of having kids soon, and so I think we both came out of that feeling more supported and connected. And I think most of my life and career, I probably have been in kind of situations where I could have felt that. I grew up as I think the only Asian family in a predominantly white suburb. I was a female in engineering back in the 80s, so a long time ago, and female leader in an automotive company. But I think what I keep in mind is, look, we are all multidimensional, right? We are so that thing that might feel like the only is just one thing, and there's so many other dimensions on which you could connect. And I think I've been fortunate to be able to do that over the years. And I've certainly seen the power of that. So whether as as a female leader, I've sat on our executive committee now for over 15 years. And I've seen the change in the dynamics at the table from when it was just one or two of us to now we have 4 out of 10 women as part of our executive committee. And I think it's been really exciting to see I think really awakening of the Asian American community in terms of really feeling the power of their voices and speaking up, the allyship that we're seeing for how Asians are speaking up for other Asians, and also how non-Asians are. So that, that power of allyship now, I've seen that along my Asian dimension too. And, I just think, and if you think about beyond Asian and how non-Asians are doing that, we're all connecting on that dimension of really standing up to hate. So my advice would be just to remember that we have so much more, and to connect on those other dimensions and find your allies to support you, whether they are going through the same thing as you, or they can support you.
Yes, absolutely. I've been loving seeing all this allyship and solidarity lately. It's been so beautiful. So yeah, Julia, thank you. And then Krish, I will come to you next. Your experiences and your advice for others who might be experiencing those feelings of being the only.
Yeah, I think for what I recommend and always encourage people to do is to seek out a mentor. And I'm a firm believer in the power of mentorship to help folks, get some thought and guidance in sort of shaping one's career and knowing how to deal with situations and navigate through, an organization where there might be a level of complexities given sort of the role that you're in, and the challenges of sort of growing in that role. And our company has a number of programs designed around mentorship, sponsorship, and one in particular that I think is extremely impactful is the one that I mentioned, which was a diversity leadership accelerator program. And it's a 9-month coaching and sponsorship program that's really designed to help high-performing individuals advance their careers at Dell. And I always encourage people to seek out mentors. I've been the beneficiary of having had mentors throughout my career who have been extremely helpful in providing a perspective, sharing their own experiences with me in a way that has, enabled me to deal with a whole variety of situations and not feel like I was the only.
Absolutely. I agree so much. I think mentorship is absolutely key. I have many mentors that I'm so blessed to have in my life. I'm always texting them, can you look at this script? It's an emergency. So they've just been so kind and giving up their time. So yes, very important for sure. All right. So I think now we're going to get to some audience questions. Thank you to those who have submitted, and feel free if you do have a question to drop it in the chat. We will make sure to get to as many as possible. So the first one, what are your respective industries' strategies to get more AAPIs in higher positions, such as C-suite level positions? So Philipp, I will start with you.
Yes, certainly. I think that our approach is twofold. It's one, external, right? And so it's about how do we recruit talent? And, if you ever hear, someone say that, hey, we can't find talent in a certain community, trust me, it's because they're not looking hard enough, because there is talent out there. And you have to go to the source, right? If you're an organization that you're only recruiting at the same schools or the same coast or the same places, you might not be surprised that you keep getting the same result. And so we're very intentional externally about how we recruit in a variety of different areas of the business. When we talk about, technology, when we talk about supply chain, when we talk about some of these advanced fields where there is a need for a pipeline and for development leaders, we spend a lot of time doing that externally. Internally, a part of our now twice a year CDEI report is not just examining the amount of AIPI or women or other vulnerable groups, how many we have within the company, but we also measure how many are being promoted. And when we look at the numbers, we assess why are rates the way they are, and that's among a variety of different communities. And then we try to zero in on what can we do to support and nourish talent, right? And so we spend a lot of time here today talking about mentorship and providing resources on the inclusivity front. But in terms of actual management leadership, how do we support professionals so that we do prepare them as they enter into each level of their careers?
Awesome. Thank you, Philipp. And then Julia, same question for you. What is Toyota doing specifically to get more AAPIs into higher positions, such as C-suite level positions?
Yeah, I think a couple things. So we are expanding our leadership development programs and activities for our AAPI talent. And we've had those programs for a number of years, but we're expanding those more recently. And then the other thing is, I touched on it earlier, is I think it's this, the D&I consulting approach where we work, or the D&I team and the HR team works with each of our leaders. And it starts with that fact finding of really understanding what does the pipeline look like, right? And then where are the issues? Krish talked about the leaky pipeline. Sometimes it's that, sometimes it may be a retention issue, and there's a different type of countermeasure, we call them, to address whether it's mentoring. We also have sponsorship programs. So I think it goes back to to that in terms of how we look across our organization and really link our diversity fully integrate our diversity and inclusion efforts into our talent development and our pipeline development.
Awesome. And then Krish, same question for you.
Yeah, much like Julia and Philip mentioned, we have similar programs, but one that I wanted to call out is a program that we piloted in 2020, and it's called the Career and Culture Conversations program. And it's a program that allows potential talent the chance to meet with a Dell cultural ambassador for a stress-free, low-pressure conversation. The conversations allow team members to share, who we are as a company and what we're doing for D&I, and offer glimpses into what sort of roles at Dell might look like. And this started out in 2020 as a small pilot in North America, but now we've held more, about 125 career and culture conversations with a number of ambassadors supporting this program. And we think that programs like this help us identify talent and also provide our talent with sort of a line of sight into the different programs that the company offers. And we also, as part of our diversity plan, we have a number of leadership development programs for our high potential talent. And so these sort of programs, we think, will help us attain our goals that we've set for us, our 2030 moonshot goals, to get more members of underrepresented groups into leadership positions in the company.
Gotcha, thank you. All right, so to our next audience question, what were some of the initial challenges your organizations faced when developing your diversity and inclusion initiatives? So Philip?
Yeah, so D&I has been long a part of Walmart's journey and history as a company, and we've had a pretty robust program for a number of years. I do think that establishing metrics of success tends to be kind of the biggest challenge for organizations, because as I mentioned earlier, you don't want to limit your D&I programming to just numbers only. Numbers are important. They're a great way to kind of measure how far you've come along. But I think there are other collaborative ways to ensure that senior leadership across the company are equipped to support D&I functions. So I think Walmart, like every other company, has had its journey. Sometimes change is difficult, right? I mean, change is difficult for organizations, especially the size and scale of Walmart. And so we have introduced kind of a couple of new things, such as the key performance indicators within the D&I space. The scorecard, as I mentioned earlier, having some of those tough conversations with leaders who may be lagging a little bit behind their peers and getting to where we want to be. Those are all the kind of gumbo pot of issues that you could expect as you grow.
Philip, thank you. And Julia, same question for you. Initial challenges when creating the D&I initiatives?
Yeah. I think like we all have these long journeys. So I'm thinking back. I think initially it was really about, what is the business case? Why is this important? And really helping people understand that and that it's authentic, that we really believe that that it is better for our business and better for our customers and better for our team members. And then, like Philip said, the leadership, ownership, accountability, that's always something that you work on over time. I think we've kind of been through different stages. A lot of the initial stages were around education, kind of the basics of diversity and inclusion. And certainly the whole field has evolved over the years. And then we kind of went to best practice sharing. And now we have a really, I think, a strong foundation. But there's always more to do, and that's this more customized approach that we're working on, and the kinds of new things we're working on are getting at what I'll call maybe broadening. I call broadening the band of inclusion, right? So part of supporting underrepresented people growing, accelerating their paths to senior leadership is also how are we changing the environment for them. And so actually, I'm excited. We have a couple new programs that are expanding this year. One is, it's a type of reverse mentoring that we implemented, really for our diverse leaders, many of them involved with our business partnering groups, to mentor senior executives, to really help the senior executives learn. And I had a chance to pilot last year, and I just got found out who my mentor will be this with the launch. So I think that's going to really help expand thinking of senior leaders. And we also have a male allyship program that's just being launched. There we have 2 senior executives. I love that they're doing this, and I think it will really help accelerate things, because especially in areas like microaggressions or unconscious bias, wherever we can expand that consciousness and support each other to change the culture, I think will help. So I feel like it depends kind of where you are and what stage, what issues you're dealing with, but there's always something. It's a journey.
Absolutely. Interesting. I've never heard of reverse mentoring before. Does that ever get awkward with people who are at a lower level telling more senior people what to do?
Not for me. I think it's been great. And, other places that we've used in the past is with like learning about technology, for example, is a place where sometimes reverse mentorship has been used. But I think this usage and expanding it here at Toyota is the push that we're doing this year.
Awesome. I love that. And yeah, Krish, same question to you. Initial challenges when creating D&I initiatives?
Sure. I think the company has had a long history of supporting D&I initiatives, but I think, as I said, we've come to realize that it's not just a nice to have, or it's something that we should do to feel good about ourselves, but it is truly a business imperative to embrace D&I and develop a diverse and an inclusive culture and an environment. And so I'd say, especially for leaders, making sure that they understand why it's a business imperative and being able to tie it to business outcomes was really important and critical. And leaders are now being held accountable in terms of their commitment and their attainment of these goals that we've set for ourselves. And as I said earlier, we have layers of governance now, very structured, to provide and include broad representation of executives and team members across Dell and our global D&I efforts. And at the very top of this governance structure is our Global Diversity Council. And Michael Dell himself leads that council. And for him, he's always been a firm believer in the importance of D&I, and now he's holding our leaders more accountable, and the scorecards that we mentioned sort of help us support our business unit leaders in ensuring that they have line of sight into their teams and their sort of progress towards our D&I goals. But I would say tying business outcomes and ensuring that people understand why it's a business imperative was really something that we had to work on, and we think we've succeeded in making that case very clearly to our leaders.
Awesome. Krish, thank you. And to our next audience question, in terms of public policy, can you speak about what your organizations are doing in this space? I've certainly seen a lot more advocacy from major corporations, including the recent anti-hate crime bill. So Philipp, I will begin with you.
Yeah, sure. And before I even answer that great question, I just wanted to piggyback a little bit off of what Julia said earlier about reverse mentorship. I think that's a very interesting concept and a very unique thing to have built into your culture, just because we have to remember, regardless of where someone sits within a company, whether it's senior leadership, middle management, and below, an inclusive journey is a very individual one, right? You connected it to the core of the company, the business imperative, all the other important things that we mentioned. But at the end of the day, it's still an individual journey. And, you can provide an employee, with resources. You could provide them with training and videos and all of the important different educational tools. But that could be the first time that person has had to encounter some of those conversations and have had to encounter some of those concepts and thoughts. So it's important to have the type of safe space and the type of culture within your company where even once I have gone through the training, am I allowed to share my thoughts and feelings and kind of have an exchange, with my colleagues from those communities to further understand and to better contextualize the training that I just received. So I thought that was a very important concept, and glad that Julia mentioned that. In terms of, I was a part of the AIPI community. It very much extends not just through our internal business operations and some of the things we talked about today, but also includes externally, includes supporting organizations and partnering organizations like APACS. These organizations are so incredibly important because they're doing the work day in, day out. They're at the forefront of thought leadership, and they help hold organizations like ours accountable, right? I mean, asking some of the tough questions and really digging in, including on the policy front on every level, both state and federal levels of government.
Absolutely. Julia.
Well, I will absolutely second that in terms of we have strong relationships with organizations like with APACS and other organizations, and we really value that kind of thing. But what I wanted to share specifically is actually tomorrow we are having a town hall with Senator Mazie Hirono and Representative Grace Meng. And our CFO, Tracy Doi, is facilitating a session for all of our team members to learn more about what they're doing as I think they were co-sponsors of that anti-hate legislation. So I think that's an example of some of the kinds of things that we're doing. I would have to look to my expert partners in our public policy area to be able to share more details. But those are the kinds of things that I get to be involved in.
Thank you. And Krish.
Yeah, I think much like Julia and Philipp said, we do, we focus on both internal and external initiatives and efforts to support, the communities that are dealing with challenges. Internally, our ERGs, particularly the Asians in Action ERG, is a terrific resource that we've supported through our leadership and the AIA ERG leadership. For example, with the recent, hate incidents directed at the AAPI community, the Asians in Action ERG and I happen to serve on the board of that ERG. We came together with an action plan that we wanted the company to support. And so that included ensuring that external entities, much like APEX, who are supporting that community, received support from us. Sometimes, in some instances, when our employees made financial contributions, the company matched those financial contributions. We're supporting engagement with entities, and it's a much more sort of grassroots-driven approach that we've taken to ensure that listening to our team members and hearing their experiences and getting input from them on how best we can have an impact, we feel is the best way to support them and to drive change, and that's what we've tried to do.
Krish, thank you. We are almost running out of time, unfortunately, so I just want to go around and give all of you one more chance to say anything else you wanted to throw out there that we didn't get a chance to. So Philipp, I will start with you.
Great, thanks, Amy, and thanks again, APACS, for allowing Walmart to be a part of this conversation today. As I mentioned earlier, it's so critically important, and as you can see from me and Julia and Krish, that all of our companies, we really are trying to build the best diverse and inclusive environments possible. At Walmart, we say all the time, 90% of Americans live within 10 miles of a Walmart. And so for us, ensuring that our workforce reflects the communities that we're in all across the country is very personal. And I hope that you heard that in my remarks today. And this is also not the end of a D&I conversation. I feel like for all the activity that's happening now, all the positive signs of courage in the broader business community, I honestly feel like we're still at the beginning of the conversation. And so I'm very much looking forward to the progress that will be made, not just at Walmart, but also beyond. So again, thanks for having me today.
Absolutely. Julia?
Yeah, thank you as well. Thank you, Apex. Toyota is honored to be here, and it's been great to be on this panel with all of you. I just want to reiterate how I agree. I think there's a very exciting time for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And, like we all shared, Toyota definitely feels like it is core to who we are. And, our founding principles of respect for people, it really goes to what we feel is important in our ability to contribute to society. We feel like we are better together, and that includes not only our team members, but our partners, whether it's our dealer partners or our suppliers or our community. And through the diversity of the workforce and true inclusion, we can get those benefits together. So I look forward to continued progress in this arena.
Julia, thank you. And Krish?
Much like Julia and Philipp said, it's really an honor for Dell to have been invited to participate today. And Amy, thank you for having us and moderating this panel. It's dialogue and discussions like this, I think, that will help us as companies that operate, across the globe in diverse communities everywhere, continue to make progress and influence change. I've learned a lot from just listening to Philipp and Julia today, and this is the sort of dialogue that we continue to need to have. As I said, at Dell, it's really a core part of our DNA. That's what diversity and inclusion is for us. It's really more than what we do. It's who we are. And we are firm believers that a diverse and inclusive environment ensures that Dell is a place where people want to work, team members feel that they belong, and our values reflect those of our customers. And so creating a diverse and inclusive culture is key to how we will continue to grow our business and ensure success both today and in the future. And we're firmly committed to making steady progress towards our moonshot goals and having an impact in the communities in the world and make a real difference in the lives of people.
Awesome, Krish, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much to all three of you, Krish, Julia, and Philipp, for your time today and being willing to share. I personally found this so fascinating. I've learned so much, and it's been really awesome getting a little peek into the inner workings of such well-known companies and hearing about your commitment to diversity and inclusion. We've made a lot of progress, still lots to be done, and honestly, I think it starts right here with conversations like this. So thank you, all three of you, for your time very much, and thank you to everyone in the audience who has tuned in today for watching. This concludes our panel. We will now be taking a quick 30-minute break before the next one. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Bye now.